Hello everyone, my name is Alex. Since I was born, people have called me by nickname of my father. This is especially a common name for parents who are acquainted with our family and who are pitiful to their children. I have just won a lot of awards and scholarships from my studies. Another aspect, they all wanted to be like me, but then no one wanted to be like me and live my life just because I met a money-loving stepmother. My father and mother met and loved each other when they were in college, and my father particularly liked telling me my grandmother's love stories. Each time my dad told me, my mother laughed happily. Then, did you recall yourself from the past? Dad said mom was everything to him. When he had unsuccessful work, his mother was by his side to comfort and encourage him, which made him successful and had a lot of money now. But where's the happy ending for my family when my mother left us because of an ovary cancer? It was a day that I saw him crying in corridor of hospital. I was stunned. The footsteps of a 14-year-old son seemed to stop. I could hear the echo of my father's cry, and my brain started forming question marks. I approached him, seeing tears streaming down my successful father. He hugged me as usual. He could not hide me anymore. He said my mother couldn't survive for longer than 3 months. This time, I was started in panic. That day I spoke to my father. He talked a lot, but the sum of knowledge I got was about how long my mother had been staying with us. Me and Dad hugged each other and cried. Mom will go? How did my father and I live without her? Since my father was employed, he has devoted all his time to my mother in the last days of her life. One day, he brought a little dog to play with my mom. She loved it. It seems that my family no longer had gloomy atmosphere. No matter what is happening in front of us, at least until now, our family still has a smile and happiness. As for the nurse next to my mom, I always found her peeking at my father. What does she mean? 4 months later. Since the death of my mother, my father did not appear to be in a good mood. He worked until late at night, and he drank. Every moment I saw my father, I smelled alcohol. His relentless work has earned a lot of income, but now nothing is going to make him happy again. Also, after my mother left her beloved home, the nurse beside me gradually appeared more and more in my dad's and my life. She often comes home and meets my dad. Actually, she's planning to join our family when her mother is gone. She looked after me and the dog and did not forget to comfort my unhappy father. She freely came in and out of our house as if it was her own house. And in the end, she successfully seduced my rich father. Why do I say? Because I saw my father being happy and smiling again. He became more concerned about me and gave up unhealthy habits after my mother passed away. Maybe the new thing in his life and my change is due to the big decision my father admires. He married again, and I naturally had a mother, of course, only a stepmother. My father gave me a big shock, and I could not understand his reason at all. Doesn't he care for his son, me? How have you allowed her to become my mother? I argued with my dad and decided to transfer to the school. It made my studies supportively, and also because I didn't want to see my stepmother present in our house. The first days I moved to the school, my father came to me and explained, but I didn't want to see him hear some explanation that it was because he thought for me. My stepmother came to our family only because she looked at my father's great fortune, and I would never consider her coming into my family, to my father's heart. Thanks to the scholarship I won at school, I also went out to work at a pizza shop to cover my expenses. I hadn't received any allowance from my rich dad for 3 years. Then one day, I received a call from my dad's lawyer. The lawyer gave me a letter. He added that my father died and left the house to me. Immediately, a sense of remorse emerged in my heart. After all, he is not the father who I admire. I have not seen him for a long time. However, I did not cry in front of the lawyer and brought the letter back. In the letter was a father's stroke, saying he was very upset after his mother's death. Searching through all corners of the house, he found a letter from his mother. The substance of the letter was that my mother expected him to continue his life and take good care of me, which is why he accepted my mother's nurse into my family. And he also apologized to me because he didn't expect the son who he worried about the most to respond so violently, not even returning home for 3 years. He left a huge fortune for his stepmother, and his heart only had the image of my mother. I returned to the house, seeing that my stepmother had no sadness after her husband's death. I had a cruel thought that she was the culprit who killed her husband, like the TV series. It seems that after 3 years, she's still full of spring. I just walked softly into my room. Upon my father's passing, she was like her true self. To be honest, I had a psychological crisis for a long time with what she did then. The first thing, she called the dog owner's service center to take our family dog away with an excuse that the dog was depressed and no longer playing like she used to. Take the dog to a place where he can make more friends. My parents' belongings, she immediately packed them up and scattered in the warehouse. I cried in the shed, holding my dad and mom in my hand. Then my stepmother was like the owner of the house. She told me I could go back to the house anytime I wanted. What's going on? She didn't even say a word about moving into this house when my father had left behind an enormous fortune. She started her funerals just like real money people. Every day she just revolves around makeup and partying tirelessly. Constantly, the expensive items that my stepmother bought through the websites were quickly transferred, and those items were piled up in my house. Of course, the amount of money that Dad had left was also running out. My mind was annoyed, and it also came to my mind that I might poison myself in a glass of drinking water to kill my stepmother. I can't stay in this house anymore. I'll go crazy for the worthless things she does. I moved closer to where I was working and decided to go home once a month, of course not to visit her health. Not longer, my stepmother informed me that she would marry a man named Alex. I know that guy. He is the guy who often parties with her friends in my own house. He and my stepmother are only living on the huge amount of money my father left behind. She explained to me that she was very sad about my father's death, but she also had to continue her life. My stepmother also added that she will not get married somewhere else and can ask me to look after the house or not. I just smiled and said yes. She said it with a sad and sorry face for me, but I knew she was just trying to show that look. I noticed her talking on the phone, and she and that guy were happily planning a wedding and would honeymoon for about a month on some pretty island. And I know what I have to do now. This is the house under my ownership. It can't belong to my stepmother and that new husband. I go online and post information to anyone who wants to rent a house and start a business from there. My stepmother was just happy about the wedding without even knowing what I was doing. When she was having a good time on her honeymoon, my house was rented out very well. I was satisfied with this and no longer thought of my stepmother until she returned to her husband. She must have been very shocked and outraged when she returned to the house, because the house was no longer cramped with the stuff she had bought as before, as there were only tenants in the house. I smiled and invited her out of the house, but she was just angry and left with a saying she would return to my house. It's just that I'm living up to what I have, just that I've met a bad stepmother. Are you having some bad people like my stepmother? Stepmother?